Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really fascinating idea.
Oh, yeah.
Could our brains be more than just processors? What if they also act as like broadcasting and receiving stations for thought itself?
Okay, wow. That's a big concept.
It is. But it's not just, a random theory. Decades back, working with Dr. Alexander Graham Bell and Dr. Elmer R. Gates, we actually saw things that pointed strongly in this direction.
Really? Bell and Gates. Interesting. And that's what we're digging into today, right?
Yeah.
Based on chapter 12 of this text.
Exactly, getting into the nuts and bolts of how our minds might work on this deeper level.
And for everyone listening who wants to, get up to speed quickly but still get the full picture, we think this will offer some surprising stuff without getting too bogged down.
Definitely. So, okay, let's start with this brain as a radio idea. The basic thought is, under the right conditions, our brains might actually pick up thought impulses from other people.
Like tuning into a specific frequency.
Sort of, yeah, almost like that. I know it sounds a bit out there, maybe.
A little bit, but think about it. Have you ever been thinking about someone and then, bam, they call you? Or you know what someone's going to say?
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
And that experience, that feeling, sort of touches on what we're discussing.
Yeah, and it links back to something we've talked about before, creative imagination. Remember that?
I do. That's like the brain's receiver. Is that the right way to think about it?
Pretty much, yeah. It's the part that seems to process thoughts, not just from inside us, but potentially picking up these impulses from outside, too.
And these outside sources are pretty broad, according to the text.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about what it calls infinite intelligence, which is a big one.
Okay.
Also, impulses from our own subconscious mind, which is fascinating in itself.
Uh-huh.
Then there's input from other people's conscious minds, especially if they're really energized or focused, and even the subconscious minds of others. It connects to that idea of the sixth sense we touched on.
Wow, okay. So a lot of potential inputs.
Exactly. And it's through this creative imagination function that we might get things like intuition, those sudden hunches.
Or that weird connection you sometimes feel with people you work really closely with.
Yes. That ability to anticipate each other, maybe finish each other's sentences, know what action they'll take next. It seems like intense focus creates this kind of unspoken link.
It's really compelling when you put it like that. And the text says our minds become more receptive when they're highly engaged.
That's a key point. Highly stimulated minds seem to open up more to these external thought signals.
And what stimulates them? What kicks this into high gear?
Strong emotions, really powerful feelings, positive or negative, seem to act like an amplifier. They step up the brain's receptivity and maybe its broadcasting ability too.
So emotion is the driver here. Interesting.
Yeah, the text highlights that thought itself creates, electrical energy in the brain. We can measure that.
Right.
But it seems to be the thoughts that are like supercharged with intense emotion that have the potential to actually travel between brains in this subtle way.
So plain thought isn't enough. It needs that emotional kick.
That's the idea. Emotion gives it the intensity, the power it needs.
Okay. And speaking of intensity, the text points to one emotion in particular, doesn't it?
It does. The emotion of sex. It's described as the most powerful, most intense human emotion.
Right. And when a brain is stimulated by that emotion, but, and this is key, it's a controlled, channeled, appropriately expressed drive, it becomes highly energized.
Exactly. It's not about being uncontrolled. It's about harnessing that fundamental, powerful energy. The text calls this sex transmutation.
Transmutation.
Yeah.
Like changing its form.
Kind of. Redirecting that powerful energy intentionally. When you do that, it really energizes your thoughts, your whole mental process.
And that makes the creative imagination, the receiver, super open.
Incredibly open. Ideas can feel like they're just popping into your head, seemingly out of nowhere. It boosts that receptivity.
So it makes you a better receiver. But does it also help with sending? Does it make our own thoughts stronger?
Yes, that's the other side of it. The text suggests that when our thoughts are infused with that strong transmuted energy, they're more likely to register with and be acted upon by our own subconscious mind.
Ah, so it powers up our internal communication too, like sending stronger signals to ourselves.
Precisely. It strengthens those internal directives. So the basic principle of this mental broadcasting is you take a thought, you mix it with strong feeling or emotion,
Well,
and then you consciously direct it into your subconscious mind.
and the subconscious is the sending station.
That's the analogy, yeah. The subconscious acts as the broadcaster, sending out those emotionally charged thoughts. And creative imagination is the receiving set.
Got it. Sender and receiver.
Yeah.
And how do we operate this whole thing? What's the control mechanism?
Well, that brings us back to autosuggestion. Remember we talked about that in relation to desire?
Yes, using it to impress ideas onto the subconscious.
Exactly. Autosuggestion is presented as the tool, the medium, for consciously operating this broadcasting station. It's how you load the message, so to speak. The text even links it directly to transmuting desire into, say, its monetary equivalent.
So it's the control panel for the subconscious broadcaster.
That's a good way to think about it. So the three key components for using this mental station are the subconscious mind, the sender, creative imagination, the receiver, and autosuggestion, the operator.
And it all starts with desire.
Desire is the initial spark, the activating impulse, that focused want.
This whole discussion really highlights the power of, well, unseen things, doesn't it? Intangible forces.
It really does, and the text makes a strong point that we're probably just scratching the surface of understanding these forces. Historically, we've relied so much on just our physical senses.
True. We tend to trust what we can see and touch.
But think about how many powerful forces in our world are intangible. The immense power in ocean waves, for instance. We see the effect, but the force itself.
We can't really hold it or control it, or gravity. It's just there,
Wow.
holding everything together unseen.
Right, or thunderstorms, or even electricity. We use it constantly, but do we really understand its fundamental nature, where it comes from, its ultimate purpose? The text suggests maybe not entirely.
That's a good point. We harness it, but the deep why is still a bit mysterious.
And the text extends this to the earth itself, the intangible force or energy within its resources that gives us food, clothes, the basis for money. There's an underlying power there we often take for granted.
And then the biggest one.
The greatest of all intangibles, as the text puts it, the force of thought itself.
Yeah.
We still don't fully grasp the physical brain, how this, 3 pounds of matter translates thought into physical reality. It's incredibly complex.
But the text sounds optimistic that we will understand more eventually.
Definitely. There's a sense of approaching enlightenment on this, and the sheer complexity is mind-boggling. You mentioned Dr. C. Judson Herrick.
Yes, that comparison he made.
It's staggering, isn't it? The number of connections between brain cells, one followed by 15 million zeros. It makes astronomical numbers look tiny.
It really does. And we have, 10 to 14 billion nerve cells? Just in the outer layer, the cortex, all arranged in patterns, generating tiny electrical signals.
Which leads to the big question. Is all that incredible machinery just for running the body? Managing breathing, movement, senses?
It seems almost insufficient, doesn't it? For that level of complexity.
Could it also be designed to connect with these other intangible forces? To communicate beyond the physical?
It really makes you wonder. And this connects to some actual scientific research, doesn't it? Dr. Ryan at Duke University.
Yes, exactly. Dr. J.B. Ryan and his team did extensive research into what they call telepathy and clairvoyance. It caused quite a stir. Even the New York Times wrote an editorial about it, which kind of paralleled the ideas we're discussing.
So what did they find? How did they test this?
Well, their main experiments involved card guessing. People trying to identify cards. They couldn't see no sensory input possible. They ran hundreds of thousands of trials.
Okay.
And the results? They found a significant number of people who consistently scored way, way above what you'd expect from pure chance.
Like statistically
But
significant.
hugely significant. For some individuals, the odds against their results being just luck were like less than 1 in many millions. Astronomical odds.
Wow. So something non-random was definitely happening.
It certainly appeared so. And intriguingly, these abilities didn't seem to rely on any known sense organ. There's no telepathy organ we know of.
Right.
And distance didn't seem to matter either. People could be in the next room or hundreds of miles away, and the results were consistent. That really argues against it being some kind of physical radiation, like radio waves.
That's fascinating. If it's not physical radiation, then what is it?
That's the million-dollar question. What they did find was that the abilities seemed linked to the person's state. Better when alert and trying hard.
Okay, so you have to be actively engaged.
Yes, the percipient, as they called them, needed to really try. And interestingly, performance decreased with narcotics, which kind of goes against some popular ideas about altered states enhancing psychic ability.
Huh. So alertness helps.
It seems so. And another really interesting finding was that telepathy, mind to mind, and clairvoyance, perceiving objects or events, often showed up together in the same person with about equal strength.
Really? So they might be connected.
Ryan and his team started to think they might actually be the same fundamental gift, just expressed differently, especially since both seemed unaffected by screens, walls, or distance.
So perceiving a hidden card and perceiving a thought might be tapping into the same non-sensory faculty.
That was the hypothesis they were exploring. They even had a hunch that other unusual experiences, like maybe prophetic dreams or strong premonitions, might also be part of the same faculty.
Wow. Okay, so Ryan's work provides some, let's say, experimental grounding for these less tangible ideas.
It does seem to align. And the text then connects these findings back to your own experiences and those of your associates in finding the right conditions to stimulate this sixth sense.
You're right, the work we did around the conference table.
You described it as a kind of blending of minds, achieved through a close working alliance during intense discussion and problem solving.
It really felt like that. When we were all deeply focused on the same problem, openly sharing ideas, it was like something extra emerged. We'd hit upon insights, solutions that seemed to come from outside our individual knowledge.
Like tapping into a larger source.
Exactly. As if our combined, focused mental energy opened a door to a broader field of information or intelligence.
And the text explicitly calls this roundtable procedure a practical application of the mastermind principle.
Which we discussed before, that idea of two or more minds working in perfect harmony, creating a third, invisible, more powerful mind.
Precisely. It's presented as a way to consciously use that principle to access these deeper levels of insight and potentially communicate with intangible forces.
It also mentions revisiting the Carnegie formula from the introduction, after finishing the whole text, particularly the final chapter on the sixth sense, suggesting it all ties together then.
Yeah, it implies a deeper understanding unfolds once you have all the pieces. It all seems to build towards this idea of the mind's untapped potential.
And that final statement in the chapter really hits hard, doesn't it?
It does. All individuals have become what they are because of their dominating thoughts and desires.
It puts the responsibility, or maybe the power, squarely back on our own internal state. What we consistently think about and want shapes us.
It's a powerful summary of the whole philosophy, really, that our inner world creates our outer reality.
So, wrapping up this deep dive then,
Yeah.
the core message seems to be that our brains are these incredible instruments, maybe far more capable than we usually think. Not just processors, but potential broadcasters and receivers too.
Yeah, and understanding these intangible forces like thought, emotion, and maybe even things like telepathy or intuition is like a new frontier. We're just beginning to explore it seriously.
It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about. So, for you listening, how might these ideas shift your perspective? Thinking about this mental broadcasting, could it change how you interact with people, how you see the world?
Right. What kind of thoughts, what kind of emotionalized thoughts might you be sending out, and what subtle signals might you be picking up on from others, or even from that larger intelligence?
It's a fascinating lens to view things through. And so maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Take a moment to really consider your own dominant thoughts and desires. Based on everything we've discussed, how might they be actively shaping your reality right now?
That's the challenge and maybe the opportunity presented here, exploring that connection between your inner focus and your outer experience.